So the much anticipated DLC for Resident Evil 4 Remake is now out. It's called Separate Ways, and so in this little video I want to talk about what you're kind of getting with the DLC. Is it worth your time and money to play it? So like a bit of a review. And also, if you are outside of the Resident Evil franchise, whether maybe you just played the originals, you know, 20 odd years ago, and you're thinking, is it worth getting back into them? Or maybe you've never played any of the remakes. I want to talk a little bit about that and what you're getting with this type of Resident Evil game. So with the Separate Ways DLC, what you're getting is you're playing as Ada Wong, sort of like a James Bond character. Who has some really cool mechanics with the way that she can fight. So she can do some cool melee moves. She has this grapple gun that you can use to move around the environments, but you know, in very scripted places. You can't just do it anywhere. And she is working her way through the Resident Evil story in parallel to Leon, and she's kind of aware of what Leon's up to, trying to rescue the president's daughter, where Leon isn't really aware what she's up to. So if you obviously you need to have bought Resident Evil 4 to make it worth buying this, because you can't just buy it as a standalone. But during Resident Evil 4 you'll know, there's various bits where Ada appears, and this is filling up kind of the gaps between them. You're also getting to see kind of a different side of Ada as well, I guess, where she starts to kind of question what her role is in the Resident Evil universe and what she's doing, which is cool. So you're getting more of the same, and I'll say straight away, if you enjoyed playing Resident Evil 4 Remake, you're going to enjoy this. It's not very expensive, it's less than a tenner in the UK. It took me about 5 hours to finish it. Very replayable, I always think, these Resident Evil games, and so you should get it. You should get it. No questions asked, sort of thing. Now, the other side of this is if you are outside of the Resident Evil universe and you're looking at this footage and thinking, this looks interesting. What does Resident Evil, in the modern sense, offer to the video game enthusiast? And I think the new Resident Evil games are incredibly important, and most of them seem to be incredibly good video game experiences, and this is because they're single player, and the Capcom team put an enormous effort into the environments that the games are in. They look stunning. They look really, really beautiful. The gameplay as well is a lot slower than your traditional sort of single player game. There's some debate about whether they're survival shooters or survival games, and they vary from title to title, but generally the shooting is a bit slower, so you need to be a little bit more accurate with what you're doing. You don't have as much ammo, so that's always scarce, so you've got to be finding it or crafting it and buying it, and so that puts a little bit more of a tense feeling when you're in engagements, because you don't want to burn through all your ammo or your grenades and all that sort of stuff. But it really is, for me, it's the immersive feeling you get, even in the third person titles like Resident Evil 4 Remake. The immersion is excellent, and there aren't really many other games out there that have this level of detail in the environments, or if they do, often you're a little bit further away. You'll notice with the Resident Evil 4 Remake, and things like the Resident Evil 2 remakes as well, the third person camera really zooms in on the back of your character, so they block off a lot of the screen, and that can be take a little bit of getting used to. And you might think it's a bit odd, but what that does mean is that you can't use the third person camera to kind of peek round corners and do those cheesy things that you can do in other games to make them a little bit easier, and which then also means that you kind of have almost a first person level of immersion as well. Now, whether first person or third person is better for Resident Evil, I'll leave that up to you. I enjoy both. I think Resident Evil 8 Village is a masterpiece, but I also think games like Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 2 Remake are masterpieces as well. So if you enjoy good single player video games, I'll admit sometimes the Resident Evil ones can be a bit repetitive, because basically you're shooting enemies in the head all the time, and you have these quite interesting but often simple puzzles that you've got to solve as you're going along. Definitely check them out, because the environments, if you're a fan of amazing environments, there's very little that comes close to what Capcom achieved with these Resident Evil modern Resident Evil titles. Anyway, that's enough from me. Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways DLC. If you've played Resident Evil 4 and you've enjoyed it, just buy it. It's amazing. If you're a fan of Resident Evil and haven't bought Resident Evil 4 Remake, I mean, come on. What else can I say? But if you're outside of the Resident Evil universe and haven't played one for a while, Resident Evil 4 is a great place to come in because it is quite action orientated. It's very interesting, and eventually you can get to the DLC, or you could play it straight away, I guess, if you wanted to, but that'd be a bit of a shame. And it is really, really good. Anyway, enough from me. Speak to you soon. Bye.